Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, we can start. A fine evening to one and all, and I welcome you all to today's session on budget highlights titled as Decoding Budget 2022-23, a professional perspective organized by the Department of Commerce, School of Business Management and Legal Studies, University of Kerala. In the past 3 days, we have conducted the primary level of the post-budget analysis on the Union Budget 2022-23, which was undertaken by the students and the researchers of the department. The program came out to be a grand success, and the contributions made by each team was really commendable. And now we are entering into the second level of the post-budget analysis, which is an expert talk and analysis. And for that, we have with us an eminent personality, CS Advocate Bijoy P Pulipra. Sir is an NCLT practitioner and an accredited commercial arbitrator. He is a qualified insolvency professional, company secretary, and a registered valuer for securities and financial assets. He is qualified as a lawyer and also possesses qualification to act as an independent director of public and listed companies in accordance with the provisions of the Companies Act 2013. He has more than 18 years of experience in corporate and related laws, being a passionate corporate trainer and an accredited by Corporate Secretaries International Association. He is a prolific writer and regularly contributed articles on diverse topics to many national dailies and magazines. He is an expert in corporate litigation and regularly appears before the legal forums such as the National Company Law Tribunal and National Company Law Appellate Tribunal. With immense pride on my personal behalf and on behalf of the Department of Commerce, I would like to welcome CS Advocate Bijoy P Pulipra to the session. I would also like to invite the moderator of this session, Professor Gabriel Simon Tuttle. He's a very known figure for all of us. He's the head of the department and Dean Faculty of Commerce, and also the Director of Internal Quality Assurance Cell, University of Kerala. He's also a member of the Advisory Board on Kerala Institutional Ranking Framework of Kerala State Higher Education Council and State Quality Assurance Cell. I welcome Professor Gabriel Simon Tuttle to the session. Also, I welcome all the teachers, scholars, students, and the external participants to today's session. With this, I'm handing over to Simon, sir, for initiating the proceedings.
Thank you, Snehit, and good evening, one and all. Our distinguished speaker, CA Bijoy Pulipra, my colleagues from the department, teachers, students, and researchers who have joined. For the last 3 days, we have been very closely looking at the budget from different perspectives, basically keeping in place the views and opinion of our own scholars and students based on the facts which were brought out by the Honorable Finance Minister. So we had sessions on budget in terms of taxation, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of health, in terms of education, in terms of rural development, in terms of the digital currency and the digital fintech services which are coming in, so on and so forth. And on each session, we were looking at merits and demerits and possible implications, so on and so forth. So there are lots and lots coming out off late, which all of us are reading from the media, including business dailies, on this budget. Is not a populist budget, it is not socialistic, it is more capitalistic, so on and so forth, where it is oriented into what are the actual issues coming up with the digital currency, the central bank digital currency, the digital assets that we have been talking about. So we thought we will have our students to involve in this process, and they have done phase one. And today we are hearing from CA Bijoy Pulipra, an expert perspective on what are his views on the budget in terms of the holistic perspective for the country and for the economy and for the industry. And uh, we will, after listening to him, we will have maybe 15 minutes or so for interaction on the inputs that have actually come out. So this is what we plan to do. I also, on behalf of the department, extend a warm welcome to CA Bijoy, and I also welcome all the other teachers and participants, and let us hope that you keep your ears and eyes and mind open, not just to the budget, but to the entire changes that are coming up, that are emerging. Lots of things coming up in terms of the digital mode of trade industry, the possible changes, debate on how we can legitimize this, whether these policies policies associated to this need to be regulated, or what is the kind of implications that are coming out of it. So, with great pleasure, I request PA Bijoy Pulipra to directly take over, present his views, and after that, we will have an interaction. So, over to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simon sir, and thank you, Snehit, for the nice introduction. And I'm straight away getting into the topic. I know that you all are already discussed on this topic a lot, and you scholars are there or researchers are there. You may have already explored the budget because the budget came in February 1st, and after a few weeks, right now we are on 12th. That is around 12 day after the budget. So already enough I discussed on this topic, and already there are many comments on the social medias as well as or even on the parliament. Budget sessions are going on, and many discussions are going on many fronts. And one is that whether the budget is a capitalist budget, why we don't have a why we lost that socialist nature in our budget. That is the first question everyone will be having in the mind. So my question is also whether this budget is a capitalist budget or not, whether the budget is ignoring the poor and weaker sections of the society, especially the farmers. We know that farmers actually had a that row with the government, based on which the three prominent legislations, which is called Farmers Bill, got withdrawn. But we all were anticipating that something will be there for the farmers also. Whether there is nothing for the farmers in this, or farmers have been sidelined, that is also a question which is coming up from the various corners of society. And other question is that whether it is meant only for the corporates. That is actually everywhere, especially our opposition leaders, or even in Kerala, both sides are making this comment stating that this budget is basically meant or for the big corporations, is addressing their concerns only. And whether the budget has created failed to create like employment opportunities. We know that the unemployment rate in India is on all-time high right now. With this all-time high unemployment rate, whether the budget had done any justice to that unemployed category of the Indian population by bringing adequate employment opportunities to them. That is also a concern or a question when coming up when we are discussing about the budget. So whether the budget is a like sometimes I will also state that budget is a vision document, but some the persons who are actually arguing against that vision document perspective, stating that there is the many of these arguments, many of this the document contains only a vision which does not have the points, or it lacks vision, though it is a vision document. And finally, where is this Atma Nirbharata in this budget? So all these things are there, all these questions are there. As you may have researched on this topic already, you also may have answers to that. I don't know what kind of perspective you are having on the budget. You already may have already a conceived notion on this based on the documentations which you have verified. So when I am analyzing a budget, or when you are analyzing a budget, in my perspective, there are three perceptions for analyzing a budget. I can say that from the political perspective, a budget can be read, or from the social perspective also a budget can be read and analyzed. So from the and one more is there that I will come to after this analyzing these two. So what is a political side of a budget? Definitely, there are agendas, political agendas behind a budget. So whenever you are stating that a budget is in picture and discussions, we will see that what is in there for the political party which is actually backing the government. So in that aspect, if you're analyzing, 5 states in India are poll bound. Already they are starting going to the polling booths, and there are so naturally everyone had a apprehension or an expectation that the government is going to lean towards the 5 poll bounded states by giving some kind of sops and concessions to them. But if you analyze this budget from the political point of view, you can see that that document lacks any kind of political agenda in it. It comes of the general agenda. Second is actually this budget can be analyzed from a social perspective. So from the social perspective, we will see that we have very big social welfare schemes like Manrega or Ayushman Bharat, or now the COVID drive. All these are very, very larger perspective of the social side of the budget. Whether this budget, so when we are analyzing the budget, apart from the political point of view, you can analyze from the social point of view also. What is the budget has created that direct impact on the society as a whole? Because that whether the farmers have been addressed, whether the downtrodden have been addressed, whether the poorer section has been addressed, whether the underperformers have been addressed. All these things are there when we are seeing a budget from the social perspective. The third perspective, the more for me, it is actually the major perspective, which is called growth perspective. So when we are seeing a budget or analyzing a budget, as a nation, we have to see what is the long-term vision of a that budget is laying before the nation. What is the short-term goals the budget is placing before the nation? So from the political perspective or social perspective or from the growth perspective, a budget can be analyzed. It is up to you to do that. But from my point of view, I am analyzing a budget basically from the growth perspective, because we know that every budget is basically an annual document, which is a financial statement of a nation. Every company or every corporate or even a household is having a budget, right? All these households are living within their means. Sometimes you may be exceeding your income. You have an income which is coming, which are expected in your family, and you may be having certain kind of expected expenses also for related to that income. Whenever their expenses is within the income level, you are having a surplus budget. If you are having excess of expenses over the income, that means your expenses is more than your income, it is called a fiscal deficit budget. It's a deficit budget. In that deficit budget, what you have to do to meet the deficit, you will have to borrow from somewhere else, or you have to sell some of your assets to meet that additional expenses, right? So that is the same logic on which the nation also making the budget. So we will see before going into the budget, because the topic has been decoding the budget from the professional perspective. So you all are students, or you may be scholars, you may be teachers, so that I will discuss with you certain aspects which are some basic terminologies with respect to the budget before going into the total budget discussion as a whole. So you know that, right? There are certain terminologies which are connected with the budget. If I am saying I am not keeping it open for discussion because I don't know whether we have the time for that, but definitely we will discuss at the end of the discussion. There is three terminologies which we should understand when reading a budget. One is called fiscal deficit. Second one is called revenue deficit. And third one is called primary deficit. You may have already studied all those things, but for brushing up your knowledge, I am just explaining these three things and effect of these in this 2022 budget. So what is fiscal budget? Fiscal budget is nothing but an indicator of borrowing by the government for financing its expenditure. I told you initially that whenever there is an income flow into the nation and your expenses are within that income, you don't have to borrow. If you don't have that income to meet your expenses, I told you that you have two options. One is to borrow money, or you have to sell some assets, and using that proceeds of the sale, you can survive that particular year, or you can meet the targets. So that is called fiscal deficit, the indicator of borrowing. That's in our budget for 2020 to 23, the fiscal deficit is 6.4% of the GDP. So our fiscal deficits are normally being compared to the GDP for the comparison purpose. So 6.4% of the GDP is our fiscal deficit. So what is then revenue deficit? Our budget is actually a revenue deficit budget and fiscal deficit budget. We don't have a surplus of income. We are actually, our expenses are exceeding our income level. So we are having a deficit budget. So whenever there are excess of revenue expenditure over revenue receipts, that is called revenue deficit. Such a deficit implies the government need to borrow funds. Government need to borrow funds to meet the expenses which may not provide future returns. We know that, right? Two type of expenses. All of you are commerce graduates, so you know that what is capital expenses and what is revenue expenses. Capital expenses are those expenses which are actually being invested in some kind of assets which can generate revenue from it. Example, the nation is going to build infrastructure in the form of roads. That road will directly contribute to the growth of the economy as it is an asset, first of all. Secondly, it will give like return on the investment through toll income or some other way. Whereas revenue expenses are those which are actually the government is meeting the salary expenses, example. So these kind of, whenever the revenue income and revenue expenses does not match, or expenses is more than the revenue, that is called the revenue deficit. Then there is one more deficit is called primary deficit. That is nothing but a difference between fiscal deficit and interest payments. So it is in this budget, it is estimated to be 2.8% of the GDP in 2020-23. So if you ask me what were the key challenges before Honorable Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharamanji while preparing this budget, you may have already analyzed. From my perspective, three challenges were there in front of her would have been. One is to taming the inflation. What is inflation? Can anybody tell me what is inflation? You all have many of to make it a little bit interactional. I will ask you a question. Can anybody tell me what is inflation?
Rise in the level of prices and
Pardon?
rise in the price of goods, like in our economy.
Increase in the price of the goods. It can be called in other way like deterioration of the value of the currency. Whenever the buying power of the currency is coming lesser, that is called inflation. That means whenever you may have studied the economics in your classes, where whenever the supply is more in the market, the value will come less if demand is not there. Likewise, when the money is available in the markets in plenty, what will happen is that the value of the rupee will deteriorate. That means purchasing power of the currency will come down. So how we are controlling the purchasing power of the currency? The Reserve Bank of India, who is a central bank of India, will reduce the availability of the money among the public. How they are reducing? They will increase the interest rates. When they are increasing the interest rates, people will not go to the bank and borrow the money. When they are not borrowing the money because of the higher interest rate, supply of the money into the market will come down, then inflation will be under control. So primary factor for analyzing a budget is that what the government would have done to reduce the effect of inflation. Whether there is anything in this budget to control the inflation. If you see the budget for or the monetary policy of the government of the Reserve Bank of India, you can see that there is no proposal for reduction of the interest rates. The reason is that government don't want to again reduce the interest rates at this stage because we know that there are so many issues happening in the country because of the COVID induced recession. But to mitigate that, if they are reducing the interest rate, what will happen? If reducing the interest rate, again the money will come to the market, it will result in the inflation and it will again result in the price escalation of the products or commodities. So primarily that was the first key challenge would have been in the front of Nirmala Sitharamanji while preparing this budget. Second is that we are reaching 7.67% unemployment rate in India, which is the highest in the history of India. So how to bring down this unemployment rate? First is inflation to be controlled. Without pumping money into the market, how can employment be generated? That is the second question would have been here. This is just my thought process. So as a financial manager of the country, she may have faced this situation while preparing this budget. Third will be how to mitigate the effect of the degrowth. We know that for last several quarters, not only India, almost all economies in the world are facing a degrowth. Means degrowth not India for India per se. We are not reaching the expected growth level. And other countries, many developed countries are facing the degrowth, whereas we are actually not, we are underperforming. So how to tackle that issue? These three issues would have been in her mind of Nirmala Sitharamanji when preparing this budget. And she called this budget as what? Amrit Kal, or the time of nectar. Because the budget is created with a vision of India at 100. Now we are at 75. India is aged at 75. After 20 years, where the India should be. So India at 100 is the vision statement. They have placed it in the form of budget, and she called it as Amrit Kal. And when we are stating that, what is there for 100 years? What is the importance of planning for 25 years without addressing the current issues? We are facing so much issues. We are facing unemployment. We are facing so much price escalations in the fuel, induced price indication, the inflations, and we are also facing so many recession-based after effects in the economy. When without addressing these 3-4 core issues, how can the government think about a 100-year plan? That is the major opposition comments on this. You are not talking about Amurdakal, and yesterday the Kapil Sibal had mentioned the parliament that you are discussing about Rahukal, and so it is Amurdakal or Rahukal is to be discussed when we are discussing about the budget. So also, and I hope you remember that in 2019 budget, I think it is in 2019 or 2018, the budget has been put forward a vision, I think 2019 only, put forward a vision of 5 trillion economy. What the government had done in this budget to reach that 5 trillion economy. We are now a 3 trillion economy. 2 more trillion, how can be added through the implementation of the current budget, or whether this is merely an eyewash. These are the factors which should be in your mind from an academic perspective as well as from the professional perspective while analyzing a budget. Now I will go into the budget highlights. I will take heading by heading, and especially from the many, I will not go into the very detailed analysis of budget. I will not even go to the figures or percentages, but I will share my perceptions with you so that it will help you to analyze the budget as your own. That is better. If I am stating that this much money has been accounted for this much services, or Manrega scheme, this much money has been, overall we will discuss, but we will not go into due to the paucity of the time. So first of all, we have to see what is there in this budget for the economy as a whole. You can see that the most important factor or characteristics of the budget is that there is a 35.4% increment in the capital expenditure allocation of this budget. What is capital expenditure? I had initially mentioned that the government is planning to invest into income generating assets. That kind of expenditure is called capital expenditure. So there is a 35.4% increment in that capital expenditure allocation. That means last year it was 5.54 lakh crores, 5.54 lakh crores. Now it is increased by 35%. It becomes 7.50 lakh crores. What they are going to do with this? What is the effect of that kind of increment in this budget? I can tell you that the budget is a capex budget, which is actually getting that force on a single plan or vision put forward by the government called PM Gati Shakti. The PM Gati Shakti is nothing but building the transport, rail, road, air infrastructure of the country by implementing a huge money or deploying huge money into the market. While addressing this, I have to take you through certain kind of economics also. Why the government is planning to spend at this stage? We already know that the company is facing so much issues in that. And I have recently, I think one day before the budget, somebody had forwarded me a document or a YouTube link. I heard that if you are link in full, but that particular person may not be an economist. He is actually stating that the government's debt, that is external debt of India, is an all-time high. Internal debt of India is also all-time high. See, if you see the total debt of the country, 95% of the debt is internal debt, and remaining debt is from the external sources. That is from the various outside sources. Remaining will be generated from internal sources. Right. So, why the government is going to spend this much money into the capital investments like road, bridges, railways, air transport, and everything everywhere. Simultaneously, government is also thinking about disinvestment, which was last year. You know that the target was 1,75,000 crores, and the target achieved was around 50,000 crores. This year in the budget also 65,000 crore disinvestment is there. The government is going ahead with the disinvestment. I wrote an article at that time in the newspapers that there is a socialist dilemma, because the country had moved from the socialist path to a capitalist path by disinvesting the central PSUs. And the government is also encouraging the state government to disinvest the central PSUs. Why the government is now looking into this kind of aggressive sales? Is there any logic behind that? Whether that is required for the company to grow to the next level? These all are the questions normally should come to our mind as a professional, because there may be political perspectives which I am not too much bothered about. Political perspectives are have their own justifications, which I don't want to get into. So I will tell you why it is, because if you see the fiscal policy of a government of all economies in the world, you take all the economies, not only India, There are two kinds of stages the countries will go through. One is through a recession, and other one is called recovery. Right? You may have studied it. Recession means a stage in which your performance or GDP, your gross domestic product, is coming down. And recovery is a stage where you are from the recession stage, you are going back to the boom stage. That is called expansionary phase. In the recession phase, what is happening? Your GDP, that's gross domestic product of the country, will come down because of the lower productivity or lower charges on the services, and overall income of the country will come down, or productivity of the company will come down. So that is a stage where the people will face job loss, people will face poverty, people will face so many financial related stress. So the country, especially India, was facing a recession phase from the last 4 or 5 quarters because of this COVID-induced pandemic. It was not the scene before. In 2019, we were actually doing good. From 2020 and 21, we started facing this recessionary stage. So what government have to do? Government have two ways to deal with this. One is that called take a pro-cyclical approach, and other one is called counter-cyclical approach. What is this? What is a pro-cyclical approach and what is a counter-cyclical approach? Pro-cyclical, as the name suggests, going with the cycle. You know that there is a cycle, like coming down from the top, that is called recession. Going back from the bottom to the top is called recession. Sorry, recovery or expansion. So when you are moving with the cycle, that is called pro-cycle. When you are going against the cycle, that is called counter-cyclical. So in pro-cyclical stance, what the government will do is that government will reduce its spending. Government will not spend because there is a lack of economic activity. Government also will take the same stand. Government will not spend much money. Similarly, government will increase the taxes because government have to survive. That the source of revenue for the government is basically from taxes. So government have to, if the government is not doing any activity, government have to take money from the public. So what will happen? It will actually that impact the recession or make the recession aggressive. The recession force will go down because government is not doing anything primarily and they are collecting the taxes. So when the pro-cyclical approach, when the recession from recovery stage, so in the recovery stage, what government will do? Government will start investing in the recovery stage, and government will reduce the taxes at the recovery stage. Due to that reason, what is happening? Economic activity, the boom will be reach faster. We will go fast into the boom stage. Reason is that government is spending, economy is flourishing, government is spending, and government is reducing the taxes. So this is called a pro-cyclical approach. But in other is called counter-cyclical approach. What is counter-cyclical? Just opposite that. When the economy is underperforming, government will step in. Government will step in and start spending. Government will borrow the money and put it into the market. Why they will not increase the taxes. They will not reduce the taxes, but they will definitely not increase the taxes because that will burdenize the people during the recession stage. So what the government will borrow money or sell some assets and put that money into infrastructure with two intentions. One is to create some economic activity in the nation. Second is to generate employment opportunities. When you are spending huge money into the market, what is generally happening? It is creating a movement in the economy due to which the employment is getting generated. That will help that recession, the cyclical effect of the recession will get mitigated by that time. So when the recession becomes recovery, government will slow down its investment activities because the private sector, which is now boosted through the counter-cyclical effect at the recession, will become more performing at that level. That will contribute towards the economy. At that time, government will increase the taxes. So if you see this budget, we have adopted during the 2020-21 and now also we have adopted a counter-cyclical approach. Government have not increased the taxes for last two tenures. Instead they reduced it. For corporate taxes reduced. This time also there is a small reduction in the corporate taxes for cooperative societies. So there is a reduction happening, but there is no increment is happening. The also major question which is asked by the opposition leaders is why the government had not reduced the taxes. Actually, you should thank the government for not increasing the taxes during a recessionary phase. So if you are adopting the pro-cyclical approach, government would have increased it, and it will impact the society more. So here the PM Gati Shakti, which we were discussing. So I think I am clear about the pro-cyclical and counter-cyclical approach. We are now adopting a counter-cyclical approach for Indian economy for last two financial years to meet to mitigate the cyclical effect on the economy. So the 7.5 lakh crore which is being spent on the infrastructure capex specifically, what will do? It will boom the infrastructure economy, which is now struggling. 25,000 kilometers of express highways in the next one financial year, 20 to 23. You can imagine that what is the economic activity which is sponsored by the government and how much will be the employment generated to that. You can also see that government does not want to spend directly through the PSUs. So they, instead of spending it to the PSUs, they are actually, last time they decided that except 4 or 5 sectors, all the central PSUs will be disinvested and will become private. So these private sectors will come and invest into this to the tender process. So when you are generating the private scope, private employments, private companies to participate in this employment generation activity, it is actually positively generating employment opportunities, and it will create wealth among the normal people of India. So it is called crowding in. It is called private fund crowding in. That is a terminology. So it is a crowding in of private money using the public investment. So that is and India with this will become the highest growth. India's growth will be the highest among all major economies. Now we can know that we are now in a very strong position to withstand the challenges. That is a prime motto of this budget, because it is a vision for next many years. And you can see that when you are, the microeconomy and macroeconomy, the goal is to complement the macro growth with the micro all-inclusive welfare, digital economy, fintech, and tech-enabled development and energy transition, climate action. See, the budget is actually based on all these things. So if you see that the prime focus of the budget is basically the PM Gati Shakti. One is PM Gati Shakti. Second one is an inclusive development. What is inclusive development? By taking the society as a whole, you are not only concentrating on infrastructure, you are not increasing the taxes. Apart from that, you are giving equal importance to the social welfare schemes of India. And then you are looking into the third step is the productivity enhancement. What is GDP finally? GDP is nothing but the gross domestic productivity of a nation. I hope those who have heard the budget session, during the budget session, Nirmala Sitharaman ji had got a note from somewhere which she read out at the meeting as a surprise, stating that the February collection, or I think it was January collection for the GST, was 1.41 lakh crores, which is a record in the Indian history. That means country started revival. That means GST is nothing but the sum total of the reflection of the growth in the economy. When you are stating that it reached the highest 1.41 lakh crores, that means the country is still now is not in a struggling stage. Country started coming up. So the budget focus PM Gati Shakti, inclusive development, productivity enhancement, and other sunrise opportunities and energy transition. The government had given so much importance to solar and battery powered energy, that means clean energy, and also the financing of investments. Government step forward to finance these investments. So these 4 factors had acted as what to call that igniting factor for making this budget the most promising budget which has ever created in the Indian history, as per my observation. So economic recovery basically benefiting from the public investment. So public investment is coming. There is no private capital. As I told you initially, the Reserve Bank of India, if in case they are relaxing the interest rate, they're reducing the interest rate, private sector will get the money. The negative side of that is that if you are releasing the money to the public in a lesser rate, already the inflation is 5.74, which is just beneath the tolerance limit of 6%. So there is no option for the government to release the more money into the public through bank loans. So the public investment is actually benefiting the crowding in of the private capital. So that is the most prominent factor of this budget, which we have to, as an economist or as an academician or as a professional, you should be aware about. And if you see the budget, already I had mentioned about the fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit for the 25-26 is 4.5%. Fiscal deficit, what we had discussed earlier, what is that? Is that difference we have discussed, and the scheme. And if you see the most important or the most prominent recommendation in this budget is that central government is planning to allocate 1 lakh crore financial assistance to the states for the capital investment, specifically for the capital investment outlay during the 2023 period. Our Honorable Chief Minister had mentioned immediately after the budget, stating that there is nothing in the budget for the state. That is not right. from the academic perspective or from any perspective, this money will come to the state, especially because but this is basically a performance based releasing of the fund. It is not going to see, will not call a prime chief minister and say that you take some 5,000 crores out of the one. Like this, not is not going to be like that. They will give certain targets. If you are reaching that particular target, you will get certain amount of money you have to spend on it. Suppose we have a ring road is coming up in Trivandrum. It's 4,500 crores is allocated to that. I think actually that is from the PM Gati Shakti. When you are spending that money, you have to first your state have to spend some money, acquire the land, then the central government will release the fund. So 1 lakh crore for exclusively for the capital investment is one of the major attractions for this. Again, this capital investment will create employment opportunities in the state also. So that is the logic behind that. And we know that the last year, the most hue and cry was on the disinvestment of the major public sector undertakings and Life Insurance Corporation of India. LIC is going to public issue with the government stake will be 75% for the next 5 years. Then it will be reduced to 51%. But the public share voting is capped at 5%. So that means public can have only 5% voting rights, even if there is a dilution of 49%. So that means government is retaining the control. At the same time, government had encashed that locked capital, and using the locked capital, they are putting it into the active infrastructure. So if you see that adequate allocations are there in this budget also for the same purpose, for the disinvestment. And the receipt of, that last year the major disinvestment has happened in the Air India. Air India has almost gone to the Tatas, and the government had encashed certain money. And the last year mobilization from the disinvestment was around 78,000 crores. And this year's target is slightly lesser, which is 68,000 crores. So what is primarily disinvestment is? Disinvestment is nothing but unlocking the value as per me. These public sector undertakings actually having huge value, which is actually logged inside that. There is no other than dividend income. Government is not getting anything else from these companies. So if you are if you are selling it to the public, that means to the general public, we all have the option to subscribe it. If you are going and mobilizing the money from the public and distributing it again on the infrastructure, that will move the wheels of economy. That is the basic logic behind disinvestment. From as a professional, I am unable to actually differ with the point of view of the government, especially in case of disinvestment, because I am always a pro disinvestment professional. Now we will, that is all about the economy. We will now discuss about the taxes. Taxes, I had mentioned that taxes in the recessionary phase, when the country is taking a counter-cyclical approach, you cannot expect that the government will reduce the taxes. You have to thank government for not increasing the taxes, as I mentioned. So this is actually the government is putting forward a very predictable tax regime as far as the country or India nation is concerned. And government, that certain ITR, like faceless, last time the faceless assessment has been introduced. This year has been given certain options for ITR filing in correcting the ITR returns. And other thing is that in the opening speech, Simon sir had mentioned about the digital currencies. I hope you all have an idea about the digital currency or cryptocurrency. Do I have to explain it what is cryptocurrency and what is the digital assets? Or can I pass on? You have any questions on that? I will clarify and move. Are you all are clear about the cryptocurrency or digital assets?
The concept of crypto is quite clear, but the question is out here is that what is the aim of the government? What the government intends by taxing at 30? Whether they are in favor or are they against it? Means today itself, I think in the parliament, reason she had said that even it is taxed, they are not saying that it is legal. So what is the basic intention behind this move?
She has not mentioned that it is not legal. She said that in the 8 hours before, 10 hours before, she had mentioned during the budget session that we are, by taxing 30% on it, we are not going to legalize it or ban it. We may go to regulate it. So what is cryptocurrency? Cryptocurrency, we know that we are all dealing in the shares in the stock market. When you are dealing in the shares in the stock market, you have an asset which is underlying in it. That is called the company's net worth or the value of the shares of the company. When you are dealing with the cryptocurrencies, which is nothing but a coding, which is coding or digital codes, which is through which you are fictionalizing a value on that. There is no underlying asset behind that, which is actually now being used for terrorism or transnational crimes. So that is the reason why government don't want to look into that aspect. But by putting a 30% tax on cryptocurrencies, government had in a way said that you can do that, and you can that we will be taxing it. When I had made this point in one of the sessions last month, on February 2nd, the person who was sitting along with me in the on the dais had mentioned that what I had mentioned is wrong. Government does not want to legalize it. Government, because he to buttress his argument, what he had mentioned is that even if you are making an illegal income through smuggling, that smuggling is actually illegal income, though it is illegal income, is taxable in India. That means the government had not recognized smuggling as an income generating activity. So merely putting 30% tax bracket will not make it a taxable income. But my point is that here, not only the 30%, there is a 1% TDS on this transaction. 1% TDS means for a smuggle, if you are doing some smuggling activity, will there be a TDS on the transaction? No. So there is no TDS. So my point of view is that government, even though the ministry is stating that we are not legalizing it, they are maybe on the way to legalize it. They may put some restriction, because India as a country cannot move from a digital revolution, move away from it or shy away from a digital revolution, which is called crypto exchanges. Government must have to do that. Government will do that. That is the reason why the 1% is TDS on transfer of virtual assets that is imposed. That any illegal activity, you cannot put it straightly within the brackets of illegal activity, because this is my logic. No smuggling activity or no illegal activity have TDS in India. You will get punished for that. Here you are not getting punished for that. Instead, you are getting a TDS on that and 30% tax on. So definitely it is not something illegal. The government may regulate it. And other thing from the when it comes to that currency, digital currency, in the same paragraph of the budget, she had mentioned that the government, the Reserve Bank of India is planning to bring in the digital assets or digital currency. Digital currencies are nothing but a currency that we are using right now, which is in the fungible form. That means you cannot see it, but through the UPI, I can transfer money to you through UPI or Google Pay or Phone Pay, whatever it may be called, where the intermediary is again is the bank. Through a bank only, the UPI transaction is happening. But in case of a digital currency, I can transfer it directly to Snehit without interfering bank in that. Like I am giving you cash. When I am giving you cash to you, there is no bank involved in that. But for other transfers, I am giving a check to you, there is a bank involved in that. So I am giving you a draft to you, there is a bank involved in that. But normally in case of digital currency, the bank involvement will be lesser, and I can give you currency directly, but government will have a track on the currency movement. So it is actually a two-fold activity. One is that better tracking on the currency. Second is that there is no cost of reprinting on the currency. These may be the reason. So it is nothing but the current currency in the digital form. But cryptocurrencies are a little bit different, which is actually does not have a legal recognition so far. We expected to get that. And there is also when it comes to, there are certain conditionalities also attached to the digital currencies cryptocurrencies or virtual assets. She had not used the term cryptocurrency. She had used the terminology virtual assets. So whenever there is a transfer of virtual assets, there is the 1% TDS and 30% on the gain, and you cannot set off that gain with any other income or loss with any other income. So the gift of cryptocurrencies to be taxed at receivers, and there are many other norms which are connected with the cryptocurrencies. And apart from that, the cooperative societies MAT, minimum alternate tax. There is a tax called minimum alternate tax, which you are paying on the current year's business or profit, irrespective of whether you are making an accumulated loss. So the corporate companies are already getting the benefit of 15% on the MAT, but cooperative societies were taxing on this higher slab. So this year they have reduced it to 15%. So that is from the tax front, this is really very limited benefits. The reason I have already explained. That may be the reason. And one other one is that ECLGS, that emergency credit line. Emergency credit line that had extended for up to 2023. What is emergency credit line? Whenever there is a fund requirement, you can go to the bank and get an emergency credit, which is actually at the time of COVID only they had introduced it. That is expected to generate 60 lakh employment opportunities in next 5 years time, because that is for the self-employment or entrepreneurs who are looking to start some business. So that will also that is also something to add towards the job directly. The infrastructure push I had mentioned, that is indirectly adding. Apart from that, efforts of the central or state governments are leading jobs or entrepreneurial opportunities. So here the governments, central government or state government, are on the forefront to create the employment opportunities, at the same time not through their PSUs. It is through the private investment, very clear. Very clear. Government strategy is very clear. They don't want the public sector undertakings to do business because government have no business in business. Government can only be a regulator. Government will fund it and regulate it. Business is of the private. That is what the strategy of the government from very beginning. And digital ecosystem. If you see that the entire budget is actually giving a lot of e-governance initiatives, and digital ecosystem has been developed to create skill, reskill and upskill the people of the country. And the like API based skill credentials, payment layers to find relevant jobs and opportunities. So there are so many things which is connected with the budget to the e format or digital format to create employment opportunities. Again, coming back to the infrastructure and manufacturing segments, that is also one of the major highlights of this budget. Infrastructure means, you know that already I had mentioned a little bit about the infrastructure, and the PM Gati Shakti, which is a master plan for that it is formulated for the next financial year. That is the most surprising fact. 25,000 kilometers of expressway shall be constructed in next one financial year, which is going to have a huge impact, positive impact in the economy. That is the spending of the government. And it is also mentioned that 100 PM Gati Shakti terminals will be set up in next 3 years, and it will be focused on the public investment to modernize the infrastructure. Over the medium term, leveraging tech platform of Gati Shakti. That is another factor because they are now focusing the public investments to modernize the infrastructure. The railway stations are getting modernized, airports are getting modernized. So these all are part of the PM Gati Shakti, which will fasten up or reduce the effect of recession on the economy. And already I had mentioned about the blockchain. Already the blockchain-based digital rupee will be implemented, that we already discussed. And when it comes to housing and urban planning, around 48,000 crores rupees is allocated from the PM Awas Yojana. That is, if you see the social front, I had initially mentioned that from the political perspective, social perspective, and growth perspective. Whatever I had discussed up to now is from the growth perspective. Now I am going to discuss a little bit on the social perspective. There is nothing to discuss on this budget from the political perspective. That is the most appreciating factor of this budget. There is nothing to discuss on the political budget. So 45,000 crores is allotted for the PM Awas Yojana. Like if you see that in 2020 to 23, 80 lakh houses will be completed for identified beneficiaries under the PM Awas Yojana. That means the people will be directly benefited through these social welfare schemes. Similarly, the Manrega. Manrega is Mahatma Gandhi's rural employment generation programs. But this year, this budget does not have too much allocation on Manrega. And it is almost par with the previous year allocation. There is no heavy allocation on this. Around 60,000 crores allocated for providing access to tap water to 38 point households. Similarly, 60,000 crore allocated for and high level, correct. All these things directly benefiting the social side of the budget. It is going directly to the pockets of the public. There is a saying that there is an economist view is that when the country is facing recession, you have to put money into the pockets of the people. But when you are putting free money into the pocket of the people, that will result in inflation. That may be the reason why the government is not on the forefront this time to push too much towards the social welfare schemes like Manrega or Ayushman Bharat, because it's almost silent on the health aspect. There is no fresh fund allocation for this one. And a high level panel is set up for the urban planning. You can see that by taking vision of India at 100, they want to develop first tier and tier 2 cities, having the metro lines or neo metro, and they want to plan the urban areas in such a manner to generate. But there is a discontinuation factor. I would like to set a difference of opinion over there, because already there is a scheme which is called what city? All the including Trivandrum is also in that particular. So I forgot that name. Some city development program. Sorry, I forgot that name. So already there is a program which is profiling the bigger cities into a planned cities. But this budget is totally silent about what they had done to that. Instead, they had put up another new plan stating that going to be urban planning in all the cities. So one difference of opinion I have on this budget is that sometimes they are going back to the budgets, or sometimes they are referring back to the previous documentations, and we will get confused whether it is allocated currently or whether it is something about which is already discussed in the previous versions of the budget. So there is some lack of clarity. But to alleviate that kind of ambiguity, you can go to the website of Niti Aayog. The Niti Aayog website is actually capturing the state-wise allocation of the funds under spending. Our Kerala is number one in due to that reason. Because of the Niti Aayog budget, that ranking system, Kerala is one of the state which is actually efficiently utilizing many of these fund allocations or the infrastructure spending. That is the reason why Kerala is in number one. So there is a tracking system for the government, but the budget terminology is a little bit confusing as far as when she is going back to the previous year and mentioning that as a budget allocation current year. And other thing we know that for the allocation for the MSMEs and startups, around 60,000 crore program to rate MSMEs to be rolled over for the next 5 years. So there is no specific mentioning what is going to the plan. We will have to see the next 5 years what is the allocation for the MSMEs. Some ambiguity is there also. And like MSME schemes like Udyam, eSram, and NCS ASEAN portals will be interlinked. That is all some technological initiatives, which I don't want to spend too much time on that for discussing that, because you may have already read those parts. Second is like electrical vehicles, the battery swapping policy. That is one of the energy efficient and carbon credit activity where the carbon emissions will be lesser. Battery swapping policy will enable the companies to have swapping batteries, because I can go to the petrol bank or battery station and get a battery, give my battery and get a new battery and ride along. That kind of that is also something which is getting investment into these sectors, and private sector will specifically be encouraged. That is the thing, to create sustainable and innovative business models for battery and energy as a service, improving the efficiency of the EV systems. That is what about this one. And if you see the finance and inclusion, the entire budget is based on this 1 lakh crore. I had already discussed that allocation to the state. 1 lakh crore has already been being allocated to the states in 2022-23 period to catalyze specifically the capital investment. It is not for the revenue expenses. You cannot use that money for giving salaries. You cannot use that money for giving any kind of social benefits. You cannot, like KIFBI, if you see the KIFBI funds are getting utilized for some other social benefits also, which is not the intent of that. But here the budget, central government is giving the budget specifically for the capital infusion, and that will create certain kind of economic activity. And it is also proposed a digital rupee, which I have discussed. And this digital rupee will be rolled out by 2023 by current year, next year. And other thing is that from the ease of doing business, you know that there is a law called insolvency and bankruptcy code. I had taken one session for the Kerala University Commerce Department last month, I think 2-3 months before. And that is actually again enhancing, trying to make amendments to that to make it aligned with the requirement of the industry. That is one of the proposals in this. And apart from that, there is a proposal for the cross-border insolvency resolution. Cross-border insolvency resolution is nothing but a Indian resolution professional who is taking care of the properties of the ailing corporate debtor, that is a company which is defaulted the payment of the money, can go to the foreign jurisdiction and acquire assets of the Indian company in abroad. Similarly, a foreign representative of a foreign company which is facing the insolvency can come to India and acquire their assets from India. If you see that, I will to relate it, I will tell you an example for Jet Airways. Jet Airways was having assets in India as well as in many parts of the world. But when the insolvency resolution process started against the Jet Airways, the RP, the resolution professional, was unable to capture or get hold on to the assets of the Jet Airways in other countries. That is due to the lack of jurisdiction or lack of the enabling provisions in the Act. There is a law called UNCITRAL Model Law 1997. UNCITRAL Model Law is a UN law which is actually to be adopted by all the signatories of the UN conventions. So India is also a signatory to the UN Convention. Due to that reason, India is going to adopt a cross-border insolvency law regime, wherein which it will make the investment into India a more transparent and more that it will give more confidence to the investors. Due to the IBC in the involvement only, India's business ease of doing business ranking had jumped from 177 in 2014 to 67 as of date. So that is the one and only reason for jumping of the India's ease of business doing ranking. And apart from that, those who are in the commercial stream, you may know that many of the disputes in India are being handled through a mechanism called arbitration. Because India does not have that kind of sophisticated court infrastructure to deal with many of the disputes which is ongoing. So government is encouraging arbitration centers. Suppose right now, if you see many disputes like between Amazon and Future Group, The foreign companies, they will not trust the Indian legal system because of the lack of infrastructure in it. There is a sort of lot of uncertainty in the Indian judiciary or judicial systems. Due to that reasons, these arbitration centers will always be outside India, which is maybe Singapore or Hong Kong or maybe US and all. India doesn't have a proper international arbitration center up to now. So currently in this budget, in the gift city New Delhi, there is a proposal for setting up an international arbitration center that will make India an arbitration destination. Dubai is one of the major international arbitration center. Singapore, Hong Kong. Similarly, India will also be come up as that international arbitration center. That is the proposal for that. And it is also in the gift city. If you from the education perspective, you see that from the world class universities also be allowed to be set up in the gift center. That is all I can say. That is all SOPs, which we don't have the specifics of that. And if you say, like the ease of living and doing business in India, we know that to start a company in India, it is now taking only 7 or 6 days to start a company. But to wind up a company, it is now, earlier it was, before the IBC, it was taking 6 to 10 years to wind up a company. With the IBC, you can wind up a company in a 2 years time period. But the government want to wind up the company more faster, because you know that there are many companies coming up in India. We are seeing only the flourishing pictures. Only 10% of the startups are making profits worldwide. But remaining 90% are getting actually destroyed or devastated in the first year itself. The 90% of the companies are getting closed. That is a flip side of that. But these simply closing down the company business will not close down the company. There is a process called liquidation process or winding up process or striking off process. These process is a time consuming till now, it is going to be 2 years or 3 years for that. Government want to bring it down to 6 months. So ease of undoing a business is also ease of doing business. Also, ease of undoing business is also proposed in this budget. So that is called voluntary exit. You may have heard about the special economic zones, which is near to your campus. That Technopark is having special economic zones. Infosys is on economic zone. There are many economic zones are there, but now economic zones does not have any extended benefits because of the redundancy in it. Economic Zones Act is no more a act with legislation which is giving you any benefits. So this budget is going to do away with the special economic zone and coming with a new act, which is going to be beneficial for many other industries, including existing industries. And needless to say, this year, as an Atmanirbharta in Bharat, the government had put more importance to the defense, domestic manufacturing of the defense equipments. Around 25% of the defense budget is allocated for the R&D, and very prominence has been given to the development of equipments, army equipments or defense equipment indigenously. That will also boost the Indian economy generally. And I have already mentioned that the economy, the Vande Bharat, sorry, that PM Gati Shakti. Under the PM Gati Shakti, the 400 Vande Bharat Express with a speed limit of 200 kilometers per hour is proposed to be rolled out in next 3 years time. 400 trains in next 3 years time. That is, you can see it in two aspects. One is that we are going to have a better transportation system. But manufacturing 400 indigenous trains in India in 3 years time is a huge economic activity again. That is also going to create employment opportunities. Around 2,000 kilometers of rail network is to be brought under the indigenous technology that is called Kavach. And Railway Ministry is allocated with a huge amount of 1,40,000 crores for the upgradations. So these are the basic things which I would like to discuss with you on the budgetary parts of it. And if you have, I think I have covered almost all the areas in the budget, and I took around 1 hour time also. If you have any questions or queries, I will be happy to answer.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. Rightly, you have talked about the budget being a capex budget with 35.4% enhancement in the capital expenditure, counter cyclic, talking about crowding in terms of private investment, Prime Minister Gati Shakti, and the possible outlook towards Amrit Kaal. Now we are open to discussion. I would just like to put one question or one point because when we look at the budget, every time a budget comes, there are many things which are started off, and there are many things in the previous budget or in the previous budgets, for that matter, which remain unfulfilled or incomplete. So you yourself have mentioned about the 5 trillion, there was a 5 trillion economy having a moving into a 5 trillion mark, which we were talking about earlier, farmers' income doubling and all those things. So in terms of a continuum, because many things are, whether it is a fresh allocation or whether it is continuing, or whether we are saying that we are leaving out certain things in the past. How do you see this continuum approach in this budget? So after taking this particular perspective, you rightly said we're looking at the growth perspective. I'll come to the others who want to raise their.
Sir, with respect to the continuity, I have already referred about the Niti Ayog. Niti Ayog is actually beautifully managing the allocation of the funds among the states, and there is a progress report for each state. It is accessible to everyone. If you go to the Niti Ayog site, you can see that this is a well studied, well documented scenario where each state's performance is beautifully arranged. And apart from that, if you read the economic survey for the 2022, you can see that what is the vision achieved by the government from the last budget figures. So when you are reading the economic survey as well as this Niti Ayog website, you can see that there is a continuous follow-up from the part of the government, like a corporate. Government is now running the country as a corporate by putting targets, giving budgets, and making short-term goals, making long-term vision. All those things are in place. Only thing is that we have to understand that as a long-term vision instead of getting earlier. If you see some 5 or 6 years before, or maybe 10 years before, a budget is nothing but an allocation of the trains. You are analyzing the budgetary figures based on number of trains you are getting, but nobody is bothered how much train is actually coming into the routes. Every year we are saying that we are going to apply some 10 trains in this particular route, and we will clap on that. But some tax soaps also will come, but never they laid out a long-term vision ever in the history of India. But earlier it was there, like when Nehruji was there, there was a socialist view where India government want to have a more public sector undertakings under its control. Right now the scenario has been changed. Now we are into a more capitalist nature of even IBC. If you say insolvency and bankruptcy, it's basically a capitalist form of legislation. That is now the need of the hour.
Okay, thank you, thank you. So others who can raise their questions, and those who have put it in the chat box also, I think Biju, you can manage and
Yeah,
raise those.
I think there is one question on that. I will read it out. Is introduction of digital currency is a threat to formal banking sector? There is no need for having a bank account and no need for depositing in bank account for digital transaction. Salary can be paid through digital currency, will affect salary accounts, and other things is that all other petty and serious payment can be done through digital currency, will affect the fund available to banks. Yes, exactly. So this is not going to be a bank dependent system, as I mentioned, and we can see it as an opportunity instead of a threat. Because banking system right now, if you are internal transactions, if you are doing a money transfer from you to me, it is a very easy thing. But if you transfer a money from abroad to India, it is coming through a clearing bank system, right? It will only Bank of Baroda and the State Bank of India are having the clearing banks in India. This will take some time, and there is exchange rate fluctuations. If you see the currencies which is coming from abroad to India, there is some delays happening. You know that, right? If you are sending a money from US to India, it will take 2 or 3 days to reach the money to India. It is not the matter of delay. Due to that delay, there is a huge currency rate fluctuations. Because today maybe dollar rate will be higher, tomorrow dollar rate will be lesser. So these currency rate fluctuations is also affecting the economy. So I believe that this digital currency system will be cross nation, a transnation, and it will bring more faster, swifter money transfers.
Yeah, I have 2, 3 questions. Can I ask?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So the first question is actually there is a comment. Uh, I can quote the comment of one economist, and the inflation and growth is a positive correlated. Okay. So whenever there is a growth, inflation is also increasing. So there is a positive correlation. So how, as you said, that the inflation can be controlled with the interest rate. So there is a confusion over this.
And growth is definitely correlated. The problem is, suppose I will tell you through an example. I can tell you what is basically inflation. Inflation is definitely devaluation of the value of the rupee. So when you are, what the central bank is doing, central bank, that is Reserve Bank of India, is actually regulating the availability of the money in the market, either by reducing the interest rate or by increasing the interest rate. When they are increasing the interest rate, we will not go to the bank to borrow. We will deposit our money into the bank and we will get more interest on that. And when the interest is reducing, I will go to the bank and borrow even for my petty expenses. When I am borrowing, that is an easy money to me, which I will spend on matters which is not a necessity for me. Right? See, and I'm having certain money with me that is only for a specific purpose, and I don't have too much money. I will use only for necessity. If I am getting an easy money, I will go and spend on other matters, which is not a necessity for me. When I am buying that unnecessary goods, what will happen? The demand of that goods is increasing and the supply is reducing. When demand is increasing and supply is reducing, the price of that particular item will go up. Right now, if I one more example for Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz is not affordable for everyone because of the price factor. If the loan is available for everyone, for a Mercedes-Benz will now cost, say, around, for example, say 80 lakhs. And for me, that Benz is not affordable. What I will do, I will not think about buying it. When a bank is coming me and asking me whether I will give you 80 lakhs rupee loan, you please go and buy a Mercedes Benz. Then I will go and buy a Mercedes Benz. Like you also buy, Snehit also buy, everyone will buy. So everyone will start buying. What will happen? The raw material for the Mercedes Benz is scarce. They need microchips, they need that kind of manufacturing skills and all. So when there is a demand for more the Mercedes Benz, they will increase the price for that. Then with the 80 lakhs rupee, you will not be able to purchase a Mercedes Benz after some time.
Yes, but the problem is when the market is not reacting as expected, because there is a COVID ravaged economy and a lot of people lost their employment. So the market is not as much expected, then how this conceptualization will happen?
Correct.
So
See,
that's the main question.
government had given a lot of free money to the people at the time of COVID hit, because they had put money into the pocket of the people through social welfare means, through Manrega, through Ayushman Bharat. So much money has already been brought in through MSME loans with credit guarantee schemes. So much money came into the market. That is the reason why the inflation had gone up. We were under control. We were with 3% inflation growth for a long time. I think 2016, 17, 18, and 19, we were around 3% or lesser inflation. Now we are in 5.74 inflation. That is the reason why our food products, our petroleum, everywhere, it will have an impact. So government's priority will always to keep the inflation under the control. That is why the government is not reducing the interest rate. If you can say that if money is making available in the market, growth will spur out. But the problem is that when your growth is per out, you cannot be again, you have to again borrow money to buy the things. So the government had taken a different strategy where government will borrow and they will spend into the infrastructure. But that spending will not be direct, it will be through private investment. That is how it is.
Yeah, but when we consider the previous plans like demonetization and cashless economy, all I think it is flopped because that was an economic shock, and after that there is a cashless economy. But in fact, right now the money circulation, the fiat currency is more as per the data given by the RBI, and also the growth-wise, the digital payment is decreasing right now. So, but at the outset, the government started some digital currency using the blockchain. So, one of the US economists recently said that it is one of the most hyped and very useless technology. That's the blockchain. This blockchain is going to taking for the purpose of this digital currency. And again, there is a confusion over by the people, the implementation. That we need a lot of amendment in the Information Technology Act, and I think a lot of prevailing act has to be amended to implement this digital currency. So,
Correct.
yeah.
So digital currency, I don't know how it will be turning up because we don't have a model with us. It can come up properly, or there may be regulations to regulate it. So let us wait for that to come into the effect, and we will see the consequences. With respect to the demonetization, I will politely disagree with you. The reason is that the growth of the nation is being reflected not in the currency which is gone to the bank at the time of stage. It is being reflected through the the GST which is being collected by the government through the economic activity. If you see the GST collection from last few years after the GST, 2016 actually demonetization was a prelude to the GST. Just before introducing the GST and IBC, they had done the demonetization. So demonetization, you cannot take it as a standalone activity. It is an activity which is actually preluded the introduction of the GST as well as the introduction of the IBC. These two legislations have actually had so much economic impact on the nation, because in 2013, our total debt to the bank was around 1,14,000 crores, which was on the bad debts. Now it had came down drastically. Similarly, the GST collections also is on all-time high, which was never recorded before, because that doesn't mean that there was no economic activity earlier. There was also economic activity earlier, but it was not getting recorded. Now you or me cannot escape GST. You cannot get a bill from a local restaurant without you can earlier you were not getting bill at all from the restaurant. Now you will get a bill from all the restaurant. Can you buy something from any shop without a bill? That was not the practice some year before. It was into up to 2016 specifically. You will get, when you are going to a shop, they will ask you a question, sir, you need bill or not? Now you cannot expect, you will not get that question from anybody other than from small vendors. So we cannot say that demonetization is a flop. Demonetization coined with the GST had made a lot of change in the economic system. Government started getting money from the economic activity. That is it.
But the data shows a different perspective. Actually, the fiat currency, that means the fiat hard currency is circulating more right now as compared the same level before demonetization right now.
But you have
And
to see
one,
the
yeah,
GST growth also. You have to see the GST growth.
GST growth that was accepted. So what
GST growth is a direct income to the government. Unlike income tax, GST is a direct revenue to the government. Right? Suppose I am making a bill of 1 lakh rupee on you. I am collecting 18,000 rupee from you additionally and paying it to the government at 18% GST, which I cannot evade now. And there is no option for evade.
point again, the previously there is a 4%, I think 4 point something fiscal deficit. That was also even the BJP government criticized that. That was announced by the Congress, I think so. So this is the government is taking huge amount of risk when the market is not reacting as per the perception of the government. Sometimes the Moody and the Standard and Poor may downgrade the country. And also this 35.4% hike in the capital expenditure. So everything depends on the perception or expectation. If the expectation move like a negative way, sometimes there will be a huge amount of risk the government is taking.
Yeah, that is why I was expecting this question. That is why I started my presentation with the counter-cyclical approach, which is adopted by the government. So, in order to mitigate the impact of the recession, the government is going to spend more than what they are earning, right? So, the definitely fiscal deficit gap will be higher because your revenue is lesser than the income. You have two ways to bridge that gap. One is to borrow, other one is to sell. Government is doing these two things. Government is borrowing as well as government is selling. Selling its assets. When you are selling it assets, you can, from the social perspective or a socialist perspective, we will say that the government is selling all this money, all these public institutions, and government is selling the country. But from an economist perspective, I think Simon sir also may be able to add that. From an economist perspective, that is a dead money. Whatever is lying in the public sector undertakings is a dead money, which is not getting tapped at all. Only government is getting a revenue in the form of dividend. So instead of that, if you are getting a large chunk of money, and only thing is that have to be utilized properly. There is a chance of corruption is there. You're getting money into somebody's pockets, then nothing will happen. So implementation is also equally important.
So
Okay, thank you, sir.
can there be a justifiable proposition for what could be the percentage of fiscal deficit to the GDP? Can you have, is there something like that, or it is just based on how we are going to reinvest and redeploy the funds.
Sir, exactly. See, when the logic behind, or it is not something invented by our economist. It is being used by whole world and in all the economies. Where this is one way of tackling the recession. So when you are, the expectation is that your revenue will increment manifoldly in the recoveries. Your recovery will be very, very fast, and it will not. So India will reach the 5 trillion in 2 years' time. That is what it is.
But I think what Biju was trying to look at, because is our financial system, what do you call, robust enough to manage the implications of a possible risk in case the takeoff does not happen as anticipated?
Correct. That is a that may be a calculated risk from the government. Government is expecting that if we are there is always an if and buts. We can always say ask this question. There is a concern also, genuine concern also. What will happen if it is not happening like this? But what will happen if they are not spending now? That is another question. What is the situation if they are not spending now? Who will generate the employment opportunities? How the economy will pick up? Do you want the country to run through the recession entirely and wait for the recovery? All these are the other side of the question.
Looking into both the sides of it. I got
Correct.
it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, others, those who want to intervene.
There's two more questions in the chat box.
Snehid, you can read that.
Yeah. Isn't it a gamble that people will spend money without the government supporting the demand side, especially downtrodden sections and agriculture, etc.?
Correct. It cannot be, you cannot call it as a gamble. As I mentioned in the initial stage itself, we are reading the budget from social perspective as well as growth perspective. Growth means you cannot exclude a part of the section of the society and stating that the growth is only for you. When you are spending money on the infrastructure, it will say, suppose you take the example of the agriculture or downtrodden agriculture, say, suppose the Farmers Act. The Farmers Act was actually a requirement for the nation because India being a food surplus nation from 1963 onwards, India is a food surplus nation. We are burning food items because of the surplus food that is created. But still, farmers are the number of farmers who are committing suicide due to the poverty is also escalating. Why this disparity? Because of the lack of infrastructure. You don't have a system to distribute the excess production to the other part of the country who is facing famine. So by building good roads, by building good infrastructure, good transportation system, the farmers will be able to transport their items to other part of the country without delay, and that will bring more revenue to them. That will make actually that is a very contrasting fact. India being a food surplus nation, why they are committing suicide? That's because of the lack of infrastructure. So I don't think that government is gambling with the money. Government is putting the money into infrastructure development, and that is my answer to that.
So the next question
Second,
is it the right time for fiscal consolidation when you are seeing the scars created by pandemic is not abated and WHO says Omicron is not the last variant?
correct. India had spent, I think 97% of the Indian population are vaccinated. Now, many of the countries are going to treat this Omicron or Corona or whatever may be as a normal flu, and many of the countries had stopped wearing mask also. Why? It is because they want to put the economy back to the track at the early. Here, if you are stating that a new Omicron, new version may come, or physical consolidation scars are already created, then how we have to think about how to overcome that scars, how to heal that scars, how to make that Omicron. As a country, we are fighting Omicron. We are waiting Delta Cron or whatever it may be. So we cannot sit and cry on that aspects. We have to move ahead. That is already for European nations started showing examples on that. Australia, if you see, Australia initially banned everyone at the time of COVID-19. Now, when Omicron came in, they opened it everywhere. There is no restrictions in Australia now. So, likewise, we also cannot see it. Right now, there is economic activity is so poor right now because that is the reason why employment is not getting generated. There is a lot of uncertainty due to these confusing rules. So now let the government face that situation. Let the government put more money on the table. Let the people earn their own bread. So I will like also state that this budget is not a budget which is going to give bread to the poor. It is a budget which is going to teach the poor to how to make the bread. So this is how that is how I want to differentiate this budget.
So I have a question regarding is India actually really ready for, I would term it as private sector capex, because even now we are a very diverse nation. We have a very, even this budget is very helpful to corporates. I would agree with you with that, and I say that it is not a populist budget, and I really agree with the term that it is a need of the hour. But is India really ready for a private sector capex term to evolve?
Correct. I will answer that, Sayed. So first of all, you have to see the demographics of India. India is actually a very young nation with a very huge level of young population on its sleeves. Unlike many European nations, European countries are a aged population. They don't have. They are almost is a stagnancy level. If you see the developing countries, UK, US, Japan, their growth rate is lesser than 0.1 percentage. They are not growing at all because there is a stagnancy. India is a country where you can expect the growth of 8 to 12% for next 1 or 2 decades. Actually, maybe up to 2 decades, we will grow on that level. So, this is the right time for the private companies or private entrepreneurs to come into the fold. So, when they are getting encouraged to spend money into the country, that is how the country is growing. So I don't think that this is too late for or too early for the country to start. We have to being with a population of 130 or 50 crores population. When we will start doing this, we have to teach people to do business. We have to people to earn money out of the business, and we cannot depend always on the government machinery to feed us. So this is not late for us or early also.
Okay, so yeah. So the platform is open for if anyone has any question, you can raise it now.
And there is one more question from Vijesh Nair.
Yes, sir. So he asked your views on the silence of budget towards subsidies even to the poor.
Actually, there is enough allocation in the budget for the subsidies also. If you see the subsidies has not been escalated, that is maybe the reason. Subsidies has not been escalated from the previous year level, but subsidies on Manrega or other schemes are still continuing there, but they have not put so much money into the subsidies. Why subsidies are not required? I am also against the subsidies because subsidy is putting free money into the people, into the public. And instead of that, see if you see one side of the other side of the story, when you're saying the subsidy, you have to see the other side of the story. What is the percentage of the population in India who is paying income tax? Can anybody tell me what is the percentage of population? Percentage of population paying the income tax in India? No answers? Snehit? It's 10%. That means 150 crore people are being fed by 15 crore. That means 15 crores money is a socialist approach. If you're taking that money is going for distribution. Remaining 135 crore people are not actually even filing the income tax returns. So who is then feeding this? The corporates. The revenue of the corporates are the major chunk of revenue of the government. So we cannot belittle the corporate system, or we cannot say that they are not contributing. So individual tax contribution is very lesser as far as India is concerned. So we are running on the strength of the corporates which are there. So making more corporates to earn revenue will generate the revenue for the nation, because for the corporates there is lesser chance for tax evasions.
Yes, sir. So any more questions, so we can go to the final conclusion part? There is, I think, one more question in the chat box. Disinvestment trust is not visible in this budget, unlike previous budgets. May I know your take on it?
Yeah, India's disinvestment target for the last year budget was 1,75,000 crores. But that had not gained the momentum. So 2, 3 schemes had not gained the momentum from the Modi government. One is Make in India, Skill India, and this investment. These three scenarios had not taken the pace due to two factors. One is that of the coming of the COVID. And due to the COVID itself, the particular schemes had not taken its shape. And when it comes to disinvestments, the Tatas had acquired the particular Air India. Apart from that, there were no major sales happened, maybe because of the COVID. So the government had not escalated the increase the target out of 1,75,000 crores. They earned around 75,000 crores the last year, and they are expecting to sell around 68,000 crores assets this year also. That is through the IPO of the LIC. LIC is also going to the major disinvestment. But if you see the LIC, the 5 per only with the diluting 25%, government is retaining 95% voting rights for the next several years. So definitely let the money get unlocked, let the money come to the public, but corruption to be controlled. If there is parallel corruption is there, we are as he said, definitely we are going to see a bad face of it.
Yes. So any more questions?
So if there are no more questions, then we can conclude. We have heard another perspective on the budget. We have also read a lot from the dailies and from the media on different aspects, from different perspectives. And what generally we understood is implementation-wise, nation-wise, we need to look at how exactly we can progress and achieve the progress as planned, because implementation, the wisdom to implement, the judicious way in which you carry out your policies are also important for this. So let us hope that the best will come out for the nation. Now, as far as this analysis is concerned, these perspectives are concerned, this should be also seen as insightful inputs for researchers and scholars and students when they take up further learning on it, because there are different perspectives, different viewpoints, different angles, from presented from different angles in terms of the growth, in terms of the political part, the social part, the economic part, so on and so forth. So, from on behalf of the department, I thank CA Bijoy for your presentation, for your time, for your support for the department. Yeah, after the insolvency and bankruptcy code, again, you have shared your inputs here. So thank you so much. And I also thank the team with Dr. Biju and others who were hosting this, all the participants, students, and researchers. Now over to the host for the concluding.
So yes, thank you, sir, Simon sir. Thank you, Bijoy sir. Also now for proposing the formal vote of thanks, I invite Dr. Biju AV. He is the assistant professor of the department.
I think you are
So
muted.
you are on mute, sir.
Thank you, Snehid. In fact, we had an electrifying budget discussion by Advocate CS Bijoy P Pulipra. He was giving the perspectives of budget, political perspective, social perspective, and growth perspective. That was interestingly and explained the background of the budget. But some of his views, I personally, I cannot accommodate some of the views of Advocate Bijoy P Pulipra. But in fact, the insights given by him may be technically correct. I think from the visualization of a professional person, because the budget, of course, the budget is a corporate savvy budget. I would say like that. But we can see the practicability and feasibility of the budget in coming days. And I quoted some of our students team participant. He said that the good budgets are the future of nations. Good budget create long-term create very good nations and very good development. So that was a history saying, but we can hope for the best. But this budget is, of course, this budget is totally different from the budget we have experienced. It is a very short budget, and she finished within an hour. And it is not a populist budget because the whole the nation are waiting for an election. Okay, so at the outset, and I congratulate Bijoy sir for the excellent discussion and excellent content deliberation without using the PowerPoint slides. So the entire discussion he with his own orating skill, so without using the PowerPoint, that was amazing. And at the outset, on behalf of the Department of Commerce, on behalf of Commerce Club, on behalf of the entire participants who witnessed this budget speech, I express our sincere thanks to you, sir. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
And I thank the excellent moderator, the person who moderated, that our own head, Professor Simon Tuttle, acted as an excellent moderator of this session. And I thank so was with us last 3 days, and before this session we had 3 days. I think we had a discussion over more than 9 hours in this 1 hour short budget. So with our students, we discussed more than 9 hours, and that was the background of this professional speaker exercise. Okay, I thank Professor Simon Tuttle for the excellent moderating session. Thank you, sir. I thank every participants, teachers, our students, scholars, and I think many of the teachers across the state of Kerala have joined this session, and outside the state also. We have shared this link to outside state also. So I thank all the participants who witnessed this wonderful budget discussion, post-budget exercise. Thank you all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you once again, Mr. Bijoy, and thank you all. So with that, we close this particular discussion.